Welcome in on a Friday, February 4th, 2022. 3304 Daily. Dan Steinbach, Ryan Wilkes back in our producer's chair. We are joined today by Ethan Owens and Nels Williams. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We have a jam packed show today. I mean, we have so many topics on the show sheet with only an hour to go before we send you into the weekend. Uh, it was tough to whittle it down to what we wanted to talk about today. But I think we have a good litany of topics. We're going to start off the show with a little bit of reporting via ESPN. We're going to start off with the most recent Daniel Snyder story. Obviously, busy week for the Washington now Commanders, and news about new sexual assault allegations. We'll get into that, and obviously all the context of it. The NFL is just having a crazy week in the week before the Super Bowl, and then at around 1:45, we'll get into the latest Major League Baseball lockout update. Uh, Owners and players just they are not getting along. It's getting uglier. Owners aren't willing to counter. We're trying to get the federal government involved now. That's how bad it's gotten. So we'll get into that. We'll take a break. On the other side of it, I really love this topic that Ethan Owens is bringing to the table for us today. Talking about how in college sports, you look across all the Power Five, you look at team sports. Virginia Tech is one of two Power Five teams that have not won a team national championship. Which program right now is closest to winning a natty? So I really like that. We can get into that a little bit. And at the end, we got a lot of stuff from last night and look ahead to the weekend that we can just wrap up the show and have some fun closing out on a Friday. So, gentlemen, I want to welcome you in. And honestly, Nels, I want to get you involved here because I want you to bring up this Daniel Snyder story. You're the one that brought the fuller context to my attention, so I think it's only appropriate you talk about the article you found and just the people. Give them the context of what's going on here.
So essentially, and thanks for having me back. Hope to be here every Friday, Dan. Essentially, Daniel Snyder, obviously the owner of the Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders, formerly the Washington Redskins. And recently, in the past 5 or so years, there have been a just barrage of sexual assault allegations and a lot of allegations towards Daniel Snyder himself. And the NFL did their own personal investigation. Of course, they found nothing wrong. But recently now, the NFL has stated that they cannot release the findings of the investigation without the express consent of Daniel Snyder, which is just a blatant conflict of interest. Now, just about 2 hours ago, Congress has given the NFL a deadline of February 14th to turn over everything regarding the investigation into the toxic culture of the Redskins football team and the Commanders. So there's a lot of different things going on right now, and this is from Darren Hayes, who is a sports director and anchor for WSA 9, the CBS affiliate of the DMV area news station. So it just honestly it furthers the black mark and the smear that Snyder has laid upon the Washington Commanders. Now, I'm not used to calling them the Commanders yet, even though that's been their name for a couple of days now. It honestly is just another black smear across Daniel Snyder's tenure as the owner of this team. Ever since he's come to DC, he hasn't really left a good taste in a lot of fans' mouth, and a lot of fans, including myself, have chosen not to follow the team anymore because of what he's done. Growing up, I grew up a Packers and a formerly Redskins fan, but after looking at as to what Daniel Snyder has done to the team, done to the franchise and legacy in general, and just how he is as a person, I have chosen not to follow this team, and I most likely won't until Dan Snyder is gone. I think he's a horrible human being, and you just have to look at what he's done for the past 5 to 10 years of these allegations now, which the woman who had come out alleges that Snyder, after a private event, when he tried to lead her back to a limo, basically, or during the dinner, excuse me, had his hand on her thigh and was just kind of like rubbing her in her thigh. And then when they were going back to the limo, Dan started to place his hand on her lower back. And immediately his publicist and I guess his agent was like, Dan, whoa, like this isn't a good look. You can't do this. And he backed away. This is just not one of the first things that the football team has done in the past. A couple of years ago, cheerleaders were flown down to, I believe it was Puerto Rico or Costa Rica, one of the two Central America territories and states, for a private photo shoot in which season ticket holders were invited and they were forced to take photos nude. And even some of them were allegedly hooked up and got with some of the season ticket holders. So it's not the best look for the fact that Daniel Snyder still owns this team. But the fact that the NFL continues to act like their hands are tied and that they can't force Snyder out of the owner, I think is arguably worse. So it's just another another negative smear across this Commanders organization, which a lot of the fan base is unhappy with the new name to the team. A lot of the fans wanted the Red Wolves, one of the Warthogs. I saw the Admirals and the Armada out there, but this is just a dark time for a lot of Washington Commanders fans, and hopefully it gets better. But it probably won't be until Daniel Snyder is out as the owner of this team.
See, Nels, this is the interesting part that I am finding from this. The fact that say this one more time for me. Uh, Something about Daniel Snyder. He has to give permission for something to be released. What exactly was that, Ian? That side of things here.
Essentially, the NFL's report on the sexual assault and the allegations that came against him. They did their own internal report, and in their report, it detailed all of it. But for them to even release the report, they need Dan Snyder's say and whether the findings of the investigation of the team were released, which is essentially nothing is going to come from this, and nothing will see the light of day unless an intern or somebody decides to leak it.
See, now that's just outright garbage to me. The fact that that's such a conflict of interest, and I can't imagine another business, another market, another job, another position where that would be the case. Where you have to now, to me, that obviously tells me that he knows that there is damning and incriminating stuff in the NFL's report. And I mean, this obviously goes back years. You go back uh, a couple years now to a Washington Post article about how you know team execs were uh, basically blackmailing cheerleaders and having just bad culture in the room in the organization. And then you have the John Gruden emails from earlier this year indicating Bruce Allen and just once again the culture in Washington in that football building. Dan Snyder at the center of all of it. It's just a terrible look. And now you're absolutely right. I don't understand what the NFL is doing, just sitting on their hands, asking like, acting like they can't do something about this. We saw the NBA be able to just outright ban someone like Donald Sterling back when with the Clippers when that was the situation. How does how does the NFL not act on this with Dan Snyder and just the fact that this comes out again and they just had a week where they did a soft reboot of the team, changed the name, did all of it, and he's just at the center of another controversy. Shouldn't the NFL think that this is a new team with a new face? Wouldn't it make the most sense to try to just clean house and get someone new in there to try to put a positive spin on the fact that one of their franchises just did a complete marketing overhaul? I don't understand how the NFL, how anyone can think that having this guy is acceptable with the stuff that he's done and the stuff that he's allowed to happen has had allowed to happen. The culture that they've had there, it's a mess. And no, you're completely right. I don't know how the NFL can continue to just do nothing. And honestly, I would suspect that your position is a popular one amongst a lot of fans. That hey, until this guy's gone, I can't support the team.
Yeah, I mean, I one more thing that I forgot to bring up when I was talking about is that I think the reason why the NFL hasn't really done anything is because Dan Snyder must have dirt on almost every owner or every executive in the league. Because back in October and back in the fall, John Gruden was ousted as the Raiders head coach. The emails that he sent to Bruce Allen when Allen was the team president of the football team. And there was some pretty nasty stuff in there. And obviously, we don't know still who leaked it, but just those emails in general and the fact that they were sent between an executive, a high up executive of the football team and the Raiders as well, kind of shows to me that there is something going on here that the NFL does not want anyone to find out. And that if they have to oust Snyder, Snyder will essentially say, okay, if I burn, all of you are going to burn with me, including Roger Goodell, and any other team owners that dare to step forward in from me. It's essentially Snyder is sitting there with a live grenade at the other end of the table with Roger Goodell sitting there and saying, okay, I dare you to try to come after me. I dare you to try to make me sell the team because I will take this pin out and I will blow everything up with it. So I think that there's definitely something more to it. And if one day like they finally have to put their foot down and oust him, which I don't understand why he hasn't already, because if this was almost any other league or any other owner, then he would be taken out. Then it just has to be something else. There absolutely has to be something else going on here. And honestly, it kind of scares me to know what it is because you also have to look at the Brian Flores allegations of how he alleged the Miami Dolphins owner was going to pay him 100K to throw a game. I mean, are we now going to have match fixing? Are we having all these sexual assault allegations? What is going on behind the curtain? And honestly, do we really want to know to protect the integrity of the game and just the mystification of football in general?
No, I think you raised a good point there. And when the John Gruden emails leaked, that was really the number one thing. It's like, okay, there's got to be more of these out there. There's got to be more that we just don't know. And look, at the end of the day, the NFL can't be scared because there just has to come a point where you say enough is enough. And then if you take him down, and look, if he tries to say, "Oh, you're coming down with me," then they're just going to have to handle it. And it's not like before that, like this. It's not that it's unprecedented to try to oust an owner. I mean, just go back to 2017 with Jerry Richardson and the Panthers. Uh, you know, use of a racial slur. It wasn't the NFL necessarily forcing him out, but the outcry against it was strong enough to essentially, nudge them in the way of selling the team. I don't see why the same thing can't be happening here. Ryan, Ethan, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
No, I'm with everything you guys said. I mean, Nels, to your point, you know, protecting the integrity of the game with keeping, all this stuff behind the curtains. I think you raised a good point there. And, this guy, time and time again, stuff has came out and, he's already kind of running the Washington Commanders in the ground without these allegations. So I just think there's no place for him in the sport. And I definitely agree with everything you guys said.
It's definitely something that would take fans away from a team, just how like ridiculously that this team has been owned. And personally, like, just like watching ESPN and stuff like that lately, I've never seen a build up to a Super Bowl where you'll have an hour-long football show and they don't speak on the Super Bowl at all because you have so much stuff going on in the NFL right now that's, bigger than sports really. And it's tough going into like one of the biggest, the biggest game of the year in all sports, and you have all this going on, that doesn't have anything to do with the actual sport.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if these are, still dominating the headlines leading up to the game. I mean, they already are right now, and you have the Pro Bowl this weekend. It's not like anything from there is going to be too distracting. We'll see how it leads up to, next Sunday. But I really don't know. I don't know what's going to come of this, and until we see some real pressure or a real move that points in the direction of, hey, the NFL, the players, the other owners, they're gonna, Roger Goodell, they're gonna actually, take the steps necessary to get Dan Snyder to begin the process of finding a seller. And again, Nels, like you said too, this is right on the heels of the Brian Flores lawsuit and all the stories that are coming out after that. And I mean, we're seeing more and more going into the NFL. And from that Brian Flores interview, one could say that the Denver Broncos, who were implicated in that lawsuit, one could say that they are being put up for sale because of the practices that Brian Flores is talking about. So we'll see what comes of it. But honestly, we do want to get your guys' thoughts on it as well if you have any. So text in at 540-216-2231 or hit us up in the YouTube live chat. I think we're ready to move on now, and again, we'll see what comes of that. So, Nels, thank you for widening the context of the situation. So let's get into a little bit of Major League Baseball talk. Obviously, lockout update. I'm calling this version 3.0 because this is the third time we've been talking about it, I think just this week, or at least in our first 2 weeks. So we actually just got an update from this. So I'm going to first pull up the first tweet that I saw last night. This is from Evan Drellick of The Athletic. And we did just get an update from the MLB Players Union. So essentially what's going on right now is the players, we were talking about this, I want to say on Wednesday, the players made their move. They made their move towards the middle in the negotiation process. But then the owners stayed put at their $10 million level when it comes to the arbitration money. And we're trying to find a middle ground. And the owner said they were going to counteroffer. And then right now, this is from yesterday, Evan Drellick of The Athletic said, sources, MLB has told the MLBPA that it will not make a counteroffer after MLB 2 days ago saying it would. And then also Major League Baseball is trying to get a federal mediator to try to help these negotiations out, help both sides try to reach an equitable agreement, as equitable as it could be. But then just, less than 15 minutes ago, This is from the Players Association communication. You're seeing guys like Drellick, guys like Jeff Passan retweeting it, quote tweeting it, basically making the news heard. So this is a statement. I'll read it all the way. Quote, 2 months after implementing their lockout and just 2 days after committing to players that a counter proposal would be made, the owners refused to make a counter and instead requested mediation. After consultation with our executive board and taking into account a variety of factors, we have declined this request. The clearest path to a fair and timely agreement is to get back to the table. Players stand ready to negotiate. So essentially what we have here is the owners basically just breaking their promise, breaking their word, which I'm not surprised at all. They are not going to come back to the table with a counter offer. They're not going to try to budge. They're going to try. They wanted to bring in someone from the federal government in order to, work this out, work both sides, and they don't want to get back to the table with the players. And I think that is just absolute garbage. We talked about this week, how we're reaching a point where, yes, the stuff that's on the table, that's a concern, but what happens when it comes time to, like, already right now, I know that we're having a shortened season. There's no way that they are going to get 162 games in and even a full spring training in. But once you start losing seasons, okay, now you go back to 2020 and you talk about how long negotiations were when they were debating the COVID shortened year and prorated salaries and what the minor leagues looked like. This is reaching just a really bad point. And the fact that the owners want to bring someone else in from the outside, that tells me that they don't want to negotiate in good faith. And they just don't want to be able to get in a room, sit at the table with the association, with the players union, and just go to work and figure out something that can get the players what they want. But, and again, I know I'm on the player side of things, so I know that the owners, they want to act in their own interest too, but I'm not going to spend any of my breath defending billionaires. But I think at the end of the day, what this update just tells me, and even the live update that we just got 15 minutes ago, it just tells me that baseball is in a whole lot of trouble. And Ryan, you weren't here the day that we were talking about the second update of the players making a counteroffer, the owners not, and then saying they were going to. That was 2 days ago. So what are your thoughts on this? All these new things coming in.
Yeah, just the fact that they want to bring someone in from the outside, Dan, like you were saying, I think I sent you the Jeff Passan tweet when they came out with that. Um, just tells me that they're kind of fed up. Both sides are probably fed up with dealing with each other, and so they're bringing someone else in to kind of, mediate things. And it's just kind of crazy at this point that there hasn't been an agreement, and it's frustrating because there's players that are still unsigned, free agents such as Carlos Correa, who, fingers crossed, becomes a New York Yankee. It's kind of far fetched at this point, but um, Kyle Schwarber, different players like that just aren't signed and cannot be signed right now because of the lockout. And Ethan, I know you're a Cubs fan. You want Correa to go to the Cubs, but I'm hoping he becomes a Yankee. But it's becoming frustrating because I don't know when we're going to know, where these players are going and if we're going to get baseball on time. Like we were talking about a couple days ago, I believe, the dates of when to get worried and when to start. I'm already worrying. I've been worried since this all started. I mean, we've seen lockouts go on forever, like the NBA lockout a couple years ago. It's frustrating as a baseball fan. You obviously want to see baseball played on time, and you want to see spring training, and it just doesn't look like much of that is reality right now. So it's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Look, we'll keep getting updates from this. I mean, this story isn't going away. Honestly, I would not be surprised if later today we get another update from the players or from the owners. Like, the owners are going to have to respond to this, and they're probably going to come out with something that says, well, the players are being in bad faith because they don't want to even think about the idea of bringing a mediator in. Well, we've been through 3 rounds of negotiation. We've already started to come down. The owners are the ones that haven't, decided to budge back up, and they're the ones that are running for a mediator. So it's all going to be about how they want to try to control the narrative and how they're going to try to paint the players as, greedy, not willing to come to the table. It's going to be the exact same story that we saw in 2020. Ethan, you have something to say?
All I gotta say is you better become a fan of your local AAA teams. It looks like their season's gonna be longer than the actual major leagues this year, with their schedule getting bumped up to 150 games, and I highly doubt they'll be playing 162. I'd say MLB, if anything ever gets done, I'd say they're probably playing a maximum of 100 games this year because I mean pitchers and catchers should be reporting in a week. Like it's already getting behind. I don't see this going to an end anytime soon.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. As a fan of baseball, I've loved the Nationals and the Orioles ever since growing up. More the Nats than the Orioles in the past couple of years for how they've been, but it's just really unfortunate how in the past couple of years you've seen MLB ratings decline on TV, but you have seen more interaction and more fan growth based off of young guys such as Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And just for baseball to come off such a wonderful season, the Braves winning the World Series, it was a great way to cap off the season. And it seemed that the MLB was kind of steering towards a relatively better general direction than what it was before. But now, of course, it's just the owners' greed and just the owners and the players not being able to agree on anything. And it's obviously more the owners and the players is kind of ruining the sport. And the longer that they draw this out and the longer that they keep holding this out, more and more people are going to jump ship. I mean, right now the NHL is in full swing. I think the hockey is the best sport on the planet, but that's just my personal opinion. NBA is going on, Super Bowl is going on, right? So you have all these other sports that don't really care if the MLB tanks. I mean, they'd love for it to. But one thing I have seen, and this is kind of a pipe dream at this point, is that could you imagine if the MLB came out on Super Bowl Sunday and said that baseball is back and that they're most likely going to play a 100, 120 game season? That's my hope. That's my biggest hope is that Rob Manfred finally makes the right decision and comes out and says, baseball's back, baby, and steals a portion, not all of it, because the Super Bowl gets, I believe, a third of America to tune in every year, steals some of the NFL's thunder and says, guess what? Baseball's back. We're buzzing. We're coming back. Spring training's back. April so-and-so set the date. But I unfortunately don't think that's going to happen. Of course, I wish it would. But it's just really depressing and really sad from this aspect of just seeing like baseball kind of in the past couple of years dip in popularity towards TV ratings, but online on social media because of young stars, like I mentioned, Juan Soto, Vladdy Jr., and so on, just kind of fizzle. And it feels like once again, they'll be starting new and starting from the bottom.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think your hope really started to get less and less likely the more and more you talk about Rob Manfred making a correct decision. Um, and for those that haven't been following this closely or have missed the shows that we've talked about it, basically what the players union is arguing for right now is increased arbitration pools and increased money pools for essentially the best young players in baseball. They want to have earlier control of when they enter free agency because you have guys that are leaving free agency and are already on the wrong side of 30, outside after their first stint in the major leagues, after their first real contract. And the owners just it doesn't seem like they're interested in playing ball. I mean, that's a bad pun, but it's true. Ethan, you wanted to chime in here?
Well, I think the tough thing is like they want the younger players to get paid, but at the same time, you have like a Tatis taking a $300 million contract, taking up a lot of that cap space. It's kind of hard to do because they want more money for the younger players, but they're also, the ones getting nearly $500 million and for the next 10 years. It's kind of like where they're at right now. These giant deals cannot continue, or no young players will be able to keep that, keep that like $1 million, whatever they're pushing for.
Well, right, yeah, and the massive contracts that are going on in baseball, that's a real discussion to have as well. But we do have to remember, I mean, not everyone gets one of those. And I'm not saying you're saying that, but that's for the exceptional players. Whereas I think the average length of an MLB career is less than I think it's less than 4 years. It's really short. If you make the majors, you are incredibly lucky to carve out a nice little 5-year career for yourself. And even then, the earnings might not be that great, even though it is all guaranteed money, which is the plus of baseball. So yeah, we'll see where we'll see where that lands. But honestly, just continuing to hear that the owners are making more and more poor decisions. I mean, it's not at all surprising, but man, at what point does it just become we're not going to have a season? I'm not saying we won't. I feel like we'll play 100 games, but still, you're talking about losing multiple months of baseball here, and it's going to get messier the further and further this goes on. Because, like I said, once we get into, okay, how many games are we playing? What's the prorated salary going to look like? Once they figure that all out, that just adds more and more time on negotiation. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. On the other end of it, I really am excited for this conversation brought to you by Ethan Owens. So stick around for that. Very Virginia Tech focused. So we'll be right back.
One of the top teams in the ACC makes the trip up the East Coast to Blacksburg to face off with the Virginia Tech Hokies. It's Miami and Virginia Tech from Castle Coliseum. Top of the key, finds Couture left arc, right back Aluma, straightaway three, knocks it down. Padula takes it for Virginia Tech. Back out Maddox, right wing three, swish. On the corner, takes one step and rattles it down from the left wing. Darius Maddox has his second three. 60 seconds to go. Couture unleashes the left wing three, and he got it. Hunter Couture's second triple of the day, and the Hokies back within 3. 50 seconds to go in this first half.
Hunter Couture with the ball, finds a wide open Keve Aluma, drives inside, gets the foul, and the bucket. Mutz gets the board again, swings it over to Aluma, who throws it down. Then Mutz, who finds Couture. A 4-point play opportunity. Finds Darius Maddox on that right wing. Mutz all alone in the corner, and that one's good. Justin Mutz amping up this crowd in Castle Coliseum. Three on the shot clock. McGusty step back triple, cold as ice. Feels a little bit of pressure, bounce pass in the Mutz, who finds a wide open Hunter Couture. Nothing but nylon. McGusty drives, cuts inside, wide open Moore. It's an offensive foul. Pass inside to Charlie Moore from half court. Off the glass and in! Miami wins it on a half-court buzzer beater prayer. And the Hurricanes escape Blacksburg with a 78-75 victory. Oh my goodness.
Aluma wins the tip for the Hokies. Storm Murphy crosses the timeline as the student sections sing the chorus to enter Sandman. And Murphy calmly crosses the timeline. Another high ball screen from Aluma. Pulls the trigger from three. And Murphy is 3 of 3 from downtown. In his third three, he has it atop the key. Splits the defenders. Looks to kick out. No look pass to Padula for three. And it's nothing but net for the Hokies. 16-13, 12:32, clock rolling. Into the paint, Gasson, easy layup for the Dutchman, and it's 36-25. Josh Pastner has seen enough for his Yellow Jackets defense. Timeout, Georgia Tech with 4:16 to play. DeVoe now at the elbow into the paint. A reverse layup is good, and Michael DeVoe is a one-man show tonight for the Rambling Wrecks.
Murphy pull up three in transition, and he buries it. 4 for 4 for Storm Murphy, and the Hokies are up by 17. Murphy picks his pocket the other way. Murphy off the glass and in. Comes up short. Aluma, the offensive board, goes up and gets it to go. The elbow for Rodney Howard. Handoff Smith, 8 to shoot. Step back 3 left wing is good. Davon Smith, a pretty three-pointer. Murphy lob to Mutz, and he slams it down on the alley-oop with both hands. 6 to shoot, Murphy crossover, handoff Couture, double teamed, 4 to shoot, inside Aluma, quick floater off the rim, no good, Mutz follows, tips it in, and the Hokies back up by 13. Huge win for Virginia Tech, 81-66 over Georgia Tech inside Castle Coliseum, and the Hokie season still alive in 2022.
All right, welcome back. Out of break. We've got Dan Steinbach, Ryan Wilkes, Nels Williams, and Ethan Owens joining us. Although Nels Williams might not be with us the entire time because in the break, shoots us a message. Hey guys, did you know that the players union decided to block the owner's proposal of a mediator? It's like, yeah, Nels, we were just kind of talking about that for the last 10 minutes, but glad to know you're on board today. All right, Ethan, we've got some texts coming out of the break, and then we can throw it to you for your segment.
Yeah, the first one, this kind of touches on what we were just talking about. It's like, what's everyone's predictions on when the lockout will be over?
See, that's a tough one for me because I honestly don't know. I might end up looking too pessimistic from this, but I mean, again, spring training is supposed to start on the 14th, or at least pitchers and catchers are supposed to report then. I mean, after that, once you get into those weeks, you start to have to backlog spring training, and that turns into, hey, we have to backlog games. We have to delay the start of a season unless we just decide, hey, let's just not go, let's just not do a spring training, or at least do a shortened one. And then at some point, also, you got to get all these free agents figured out. You have to, have guys like Correa, if they haven't already made handshake agreements. You've got to get guys like Correa and the rest. They have to sign their deals. They have to still negotiate. So you got to figure out, okay, when we come back, how long are we going to allow free agency to continue to go on? And then we go into spring training, and then we go into playing games, and then, we're talking about prorated salaries again. So honestly, I don't know. My best hope, honestly, right now is end of March. That's when I would go, like, hey, I hope we start end of March, and then we can start before Memorial Day at the end of May. That's my hope right now.
I totally agree on that. I was going to say, not hopefully games by June 1st, hopefully games by March 31st, but I would assume probably June. We're looking early June at this point.
I'll tell you what, and Ryan, I'm sorry, let me just jump in here. They have to get this done before, I would say, March Madness is over, because then after college basketball is done, you're already done with college football, you're done with regular football, with pro football, and then you get the NBA and NHL starting to dwindle down into their playoff seasons. Baseball's got to have a structure where they're the only sport playing in summer, because that's where on a day-to-day basis they're doing their best, because they don't have any competition. They can't get to summer obviously and not be playing baseball. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm hoping end of March too. It is getting into dangerous territory because it doesn't seem like much ground has been made. And honestly, like I was saying earlier, we all want to see baseball. And we all want to see these star players sign their deals. And without this being resolved, they can't do that. So I'll be interested to see how it progresses in the next couple weeks. I mean, obviously, one day there might be out of the blue just a huge leap, and we don't really know. It's hard to tell where this will go because they might just have an epiphany one day and bang it out. So who knows? But end of March is probably the hope.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with what Ryan said. With this kind of stuff, you never know what'll happen the next day you wake up. Some days, you say, oh, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to talk to you guys. Other days are like, oh, wait, we actually need to get something done. I'd say you need to sound the alarm if they don't make any significant progress by the end of February. And like you said, Dan, the MLB, I think everybody understands in baseball right now that the market they have over summer ball is they're creme de la creme. Sorry, I was blanking on the word. They have no competition whatsoever by any major of the top four sports, right? Like you said, NBA and NHL playoffs end in mid-June. NFL's done next week. March Madness is done for college basketball. So for them to lose out on just the summer and the summer of baseball would be huge. And I think they have to understand that. So with that being said, I would say mid-March, I would hope something needs to be done. But if they're not back by mid-April to May, then that's going to be awful for the MLB. So sound the alarm if they don't get anything done by February. And if they're still not back by mid-March, April, I mean, maybe even May at that point, then it's, they're hitting DEFCON. What is the highest DEFCON? One or five? Which is DEFCON is it? I can't remember, but
I think it's 5. I think 5 sounds right.
5, yeah. They're at DEFCON 5 at that point if they're not back by then.
All right, Ethan, you got anything more for us on topic from the text or from the YouTube live chat?
Nothing really on topic. We have college football or NFL draft and some NBA, but I'm sure that's something that we can get to a different day if we don't have time for it right now.
Well, what do you know what? Honestly, it's Senior Bowl weekend. I follow that pretty closely. What's the draft question? I'll do that for a quick minute, and then we can get it to you.
Is Malik Willis being the number one quarterback off the board become more feasible?
Has it become more feasible? Absolutely. I mean, I think, to me, Kenny Pickett has been my one, but with a good Senior Bowl week, I mean, he's got the tools. It just takes one team to fall in love with a guy, and then as soon as that happens, we're off and running. I mean, hey, just in that, let's just go a couple of years ago. No one thought Baker Mayfield was going to be the number one pick until the Browns decided to like him. Everyone thought it was Sam Darnold. I mean, it's not like either of those picks have gone necessarily well, But no, it just takes one team, and Malik Willis has the tools to get it done, even though his production at Liberties last season was a little underwhelming. Ryan, you have something to say here?
Yeah, I think it's still up in the air who's the number one quarterback. I've seen recently some people say Sam Howell, some people say Malik Willis, a lot of people say Kenny Pickett. I don't think it will be fully known who's the number one quarterback until draft day. I think teams are still evaluating these options because it's a weird quarterback race because it's tight, but there's not any guy I think in this draft that really jumps off the page at you. I think the guy that I would go with, I don't think he's the number one in a lot of teams' eyes, but I think Matt Corral is my number one quarterback. I really like what he brings to the table. I do think the injury obviously puts a little tank in his stock. But overall, I think this is an interesting quarterback class and one of the more intriguing ones in the past, 5-10 years, because it's kind of turned on its head from what it was at the start of the season. You had Rattler at 1, Howell at 2, and it's kind of like Rattler's not even in the draft anymore. He's at South Carolina. So the way this quarterback class has kind of shifted and, changed, I think is really interesting. And I think we'll be waiting till draft day to see who is a clear-cut number one quarterback.
Yeah, to me, it's more of the whole Malik Willis debate because of how relatively weak this draft class at the quarterback position has been and comparatively to the past 5 years. I think it's more of analysts and people trying to figure out who is going to be the guy that surprised everybody. And I think it's more of Malik Willis has the tools and he has the talent to come in and surprise everyone at the NFL level. But then you also have people talking about like Carson Strong, Sam Howell, as you mentioned, Ryan. So I think like the clear cut, like if you want to bet all your chips on someone who is NFL ready and someone who could potentially lead an NFL team, you take Kenny Pickett. But then you also have the people that are like, I want to be right 5-10 years on the line. I want to be like Mel Kiper, who said Josh Allen was going to be the best quarterback of his draft class. I want to be like that. You know what I mean? I want to be that guy to say that. So then you shift the conversation towards, look at Malik Willis on this side. Oh, look at Carson Strong on this side. So in terms of the number one quarterback, I have to go Pickett, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of the three or two or even all three of them of Carson Strong, Sam Howell, Malik Willis come out and they actually end up succeeding in leading NFL teams. If who knows if they're going to be drafted, they probably will if they end up getting drafted by any team this year.
All right, thank you very much. Ethan, anything else, or I think we can move on now to our Virginia Tech topic of the day.
Yeah, I think I'm ready for the segment if you guys are.
No doubt. All right, so let's get some context here. What made you think about this? And then most importantly, I mean, just run with it. Give us a little bit of a context surrounding the idea, and then we can get into a little bit of a debate to close out the show.
Well, obviously this came up this year whenever Mississippi State won the College World Series because there was only 3 teams left in the Power 5 that has never won a national championship, that being Virginia Tech, Kansas State, and then Mississippi State was in there, like I just said, won the College World Series. So, this is kind of a debate I've had a lot, us being Virginia Tech students, this is something that we talk about a lot just because, we can't be the last team, to get that national championship. So my question for you guys, and not only you guys, I hope, we get some audience reactions to this too, maybe some text-ins on who they think, but which team at Virginia Tech will be first to win that national championship? Because of course we have softball and wrestling. They're both top 10, and we have a lot of programs on the uprise. Both soccer teams made the NCAA tournament. I just wanted to see your guys' opinion on that and see what kind of conversation we can have from that question.
I'll lead off, and obviously you mentioned softball and wrestling. I think those are the 2 most popular answers. Of the 2 that are closest, though, I think softball is... I think it has to be softball because with wrestling, I mean, you go to, okay, how do you win a team national championship in wrestling? You have to be dominant across the board. Like, you have to have multiple guys winning all of their weights at nationals. Obviously, they have Mekhi Lewis, who is a proven national champion, and they have a lot of, still star quality guys on that team. But from there, I think just with softball, they have what it takes to get it done, to go the distance. And when it comes time for tournament time, I mean, we saw last season, Keeler Rochard really was able to lead this team. She's back. There's another year. Her senior season, she's going to be in her best condition, and she's going to be pitching her best ball. When it comes time for tournament time, I see no reason why they can't lean on her again and get those run opportunities like that. That was a really solid run from that team last year to be a game away from making the College World Series, and then they fall to UCLA, who I forget where they fell in the whole thing. But they put up a really good fight, and again, come tournament time, that's what college softball is. It's okay. How far can your strongest arm take you? And with someone like Richard on next year's team, I see. No, I would have to say that they are the closest right now. So I think for the rest of this debate, I think we can talk about that. But then we can focus, I think, on the other sports and say, okay, if they're not the closest, how far away are they? So let's go around the room. Let's gauge everyone's opinions. But then I do want to look at some other sports. Like let's talk baseball. Let's talk men's basketball. Let's talk women's basketball. And then I think obviously let's talk football with the new coaching staff and everything being brought in.
Could I make an argument for wrestling really quick?
I would love that. Honestly, that's what this is all about. It's your segment. You do you. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so you mentioned softball, but you're really just talking about like one player in their senior year. So like, what's the future for the softball? Obviously, I know we have some good pitchers coming up, but for the future of wrestling right now, they have 9 out of 10 starters are ranked. They're absolutely dominant. They're at least they have been this year, and they're bringing in good recruiting classes. So I think in the long term, I think wrestling has the upper edge just because they have solid recruits coming in. And right now, they have 9 out of 10 that's ranked. They've been in the top 7, however many years in the last year. I think last year was their worst rankings in years. And that's probably a big part of Mackay getting hurt last year. But I think if any team's going to do it, it would be the wrestling team. And we actually had one text in said they agree with softball. And then one comment that says the women's soccer team are going to surprise the nation.
Both soccer programs are in good positions. Obviously, women's soccer is losing, stats-wise, an all-time great in Emily Gray. She's up in the top of a lot of leaderboards, or near the top. But no, they both have good foundations. I think it just comes down to seeing more postseason success and growing what they've been able to do. But I don't hate your wrestling argument. You're talking about the future of the program. I think what my approach is with softball is right now they have potentially the best pitcher in the nation, or one of them. And in softball, that's what you need to win. So in terms of who's the closest, I think softball leads the pack. But you can definitely make an argument that wrestling is set up to be, a real contender for years to come rather than just in the short term. Ryan, Ethan, Ryan, Nels, do you guys have any quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think honestly, wrestling and softball might be on even playing fields. They both got a lot of investment from the fan base, and the school in general. I think wrestling's got this sort of almost pipeline with the Southeast Regional Training Center. It's a really good resource for them. They get a lot of funding, and they get a lot of recruits that are interested in coming from the Southeast Regional Training Center. And softball was, one game away from the College World Series last year, with a tough matchup against UCLA, in which they won one of the games but lost 2 consecutive back-to-back. But they're that close. They're that close. Wrestling, I think it's tough because it seems like recently some of these bigger wrestling matches that have came to Virginia Tech, they're just not able to get, they're elite, but they're not able to get into that top tier. I remember Ohio State came here this year, and tight match came down the last matchup between the heavyweights. Tech just couldn't pull it out, and they weren't able to beat NC State last year in the ACC tournament. And it's I don't know if they're quite there yet. Both teams have like one more hump to get over. So I think they're very even, and they definitely give us the best shot at winning a title. But I think men's and women's soccer too. I think we're on the brink Tech's on the brink in 3 or 4 different sports. Women's soccer, men's soccer, both had very good seasons last year. But I think wrestling and softball are the closest, but I think there's a lot of teams on the come up.
Speaking of on the come up, in 3 years or 4 years, Brent Pry leads the Hokies to the promised land, and we get our first national championship. Book it. Bet on it now. All right.
All right,
I
Nels
think
Williams is
Brent
back with
Pry-
his edition of Friday Hot Takes. Honestly, last time it happened, Virginia Tech came away with a win, and Storm Murphy didn't play awful. I don't think he played bad against Florida State. He was just outshined by Sean Padula. So who knows? Maybe this is actually just a guarantee. Whatever Nels Williams says on this program on Fridays is going to be fateable. So I think, you know what? Lock in your futures bets for 2026, apparently, according to this guy. I think that's a good transition, though. When you look at other programs, I mean, let's just go through some. I think that baseball and both basketball programs have good structures. Kenny Brooks has done a really good job at recruiting talent and developing talent to his program. Mike Young is still in the infant stages. We see what he is able to bring. And honestly, at the end of the day, I know that the recruiting is a question for him, but I don't think he's gotten really the team and the makeup that he has wanted, because let's not forget, if we are concerned about big men, he had a big man. He had a starting big man in Michael Durr, who committed in the transfer portal, then decommitted when one of the assistant coaches left, and then he went away. So I think that he has a framework in mind of what he wants the men's basketball program to look like, and he just needs to, at the end of the day, it just comes down to following through on that. And I think a guy like Mike Jones on his staff, even if he's here for a short time and then moves on to coach elsewhere, that's a big step. Kenny Brooks, eventually he's going to be losing that talent, but how does he restock the team? And baseball, I think Chef has done a good job these last couple seasons. They have a culture, like they are like the Hammer. That's becoming its own brand. So that in and of itself is exciting. And then at the end of the day, it just comes down to they get off to some hot starts. How do they prolong that over the length of a season? And then football, Brent Pry had some comments, I think today or yesterday. He had a press conference a couple days ago, and people have been asking him about recruiting. What are his ideas on it? He is really committed to trying to get those, higher star players, those more blue chip prospects. And even if we get in the room, that's something that Tech football hasn't been able to do, hasn't been able to say. And Brent Pry is really committed to trying to get there. He name dropped guys like Micah Parsons, Saquon Barkley, difference makers, high ceiling, blue chip players that were able to make differences for Penn State on either side of the ball and help them win a Big Ten championship, in a really stacked division with a lot of other good football programs, and, being able to overcome a team like Ohio State that one year. So Brent Pry, I think, really understands what it takes to win. How far are they away? Well, that just comes down to, okay, what does Brent Pry think of this roster? What does the staff think of this roster? What does Brent Pry think of his staff, most honestly? And then seeing how they attack the recruiting trail. And we were talking about the transfer portal yesterday. How do they attack the transfer portal? We already see that likely the top two guys for the quarterback job, unless Taj Bullock, and Taj Bullock's obviously in the mix as well. How do the transfer quarterbacks, play? How do these guys that they're evaluating the talent of, how do they follow through on what the staff's expectations are for them? And then after that, if players don't meet expectations, what's the staff going to do about it? So I can't say, there's confidence, but I can't say, with Nels Williams' level of certainty that Brent Pry is ready to come in here, and I think he has the right attitude. I'll go with that. I am 100% confident that Brent Pry has the right attitude. It just comes down to being able to follow through and honestly getting a little lucky. I think national championship is a conversation that needs to wait to be had with football until they can consistently become a team that can compete in a weak ACC. That's what I'm going with.
Kind of coming off the football thing and shooting down Nels' hot take a little bit. It's like basketball, you have 68 teams make the playoffs. Football, you have 4. And ACC right now, like you just said, it's weaker. For Tech to even make the playoffs, that's probably talking going undefeated and winning the ACC. Because, who knows? It would have been close for Wake making it this year. They almost went undefeated. Obviously, they lost a couple, but, they came close to it. They had the closest chance in the ACC. So, Tech would almost have to go undefeated unless, Clemson goes back up there and you can beat like a Clemson, or you beat a couple of good teams. But this, how the schedule's looking right now, it's going to take almost an undefeated season to even make the playoff. And then you still have to beat the Bama and the Georgia to win the championship.
Yeah, that's the conversation that needs to be had. Is on the recruiting trail, you're talking about teams like Bama, Georgia. At the end of the day, it comes down to you have to be able to compete off the field with the recruiting numbers and being able to play to that level that these just SEC giants are doing to win it. Are like that's how they're winning. They're getting the better talent, and they obviously have really good coaching. So it's going to be up to Brent Pry and his staff to, just be able to, like he said, get in the door, win some of those battles, and then when you are able to build a roster, with the talent you have, and develop that into something good, that's how this team makes the next step and starts winning conference titles. And honestly, you win a Power 5 title, you're already in contention most years to get into the playoff. So that's when you start to have those conversations, when you start being more competitive in conference. But then also, national championship is another level. Like the ACC versus the SEC debate, it's very different. Like Michigan is a good example just from this past season. Power 5 champion, mollywopped Ohio State when they played them, like just completely out physical them, and then they go in and play Georgia and they get their pants pulled down. National championship and conference championship become two different stories. But if you want to point out to an ACC team having success, you point to Clemson, and what's the reason behind all that success? Well, they get a lot of really great high school athletes.
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't fully disagree with Nels that Tech has a chance at a national title in the Brent Pry era, but 3 to 4 years is just not enough time to, the gap is so large right now. It's so big. Virginia Tech is not in any position to win a national title in 3 to 4 years, just given that, in order to get these 4 or 5-star guys, you have to establish Virginia Tech as a place that they want to come. You've got to build that reputation, of that winning reputation. You've got to win games, first of all. And this season, I don't know if it's going to be Virginia Tech season to win a lot of games. We'll see. It's not the most daunting schedule in the world, but you've got to establish that. You've got to establish relationships, and you just got to establish Virginia Tech as a place that those guys want to come and win. So I don't see it happening in 3 to 4 years, but I do think, down the road, if the Brent Pry era goes how people expect it to go, it wouldn't shock me in the least if Virginia Tech was in contention, at least in the top 10 in the next, 5, 6, 7 years.
So obviously I am a Brent believer. I believe in Mr. Pry to lead us to the promised land. But you are right, is that Tech has always had the issue, and they had this under Beamer and even Fuente, is that in comparatively to other college towns, Blacksburg was not always on the map. And Beamer was not the best at recruiting. He could have done a lot better, but his focus wasn't really on recruiting, which is why I think we are here right now having this conversation. Fuente had a few good recruiting classes. The last one before he got fired was good, and then obviously a lot of them scrambled and decided to go elsewhere and decommitted and stuff like that because of the coaching change. But I have full faith in Pry, who has come from Penn State, to bring recruits down to Blacksburg. I think he understands that if you want to be a successful college football program, not only does it start on the field, but it starts in the backyards and on the high school football fields elsewhere. And I think he also understands that Virginia Tech had the footing in the Chesapeake and in the Northern Virginia area and just the Virginia area in general. And unfortunately, under Fuente and even under the last couple of seasons of Beamer, that's kind of being sapped away and stolen by Penn State, by Maryland even, and even by ODU and JMU. So I think that he understands this, and I think that next year is not going to go that well. I hope that we at least stay at 500 or above 500, but next year won't be that pretty. But then 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I firmly believe that Virginia Tech will be a contending team under Pry because he understands and he knows that it starts with recruiting. So that's just, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I want to see the Hokie football team be back on track because recently, or not recently, it's just general. Virginia Tech is a football school. There's no denying that whatsoever. Virginia Tech is a football school. People travel miles around for football every Saturday in the fall, and people don't do that for basketball. People don't do that for wrestling, unfortunately, and don't do that for softball, baseball. Although I wish, and I'm glad that it's getting a lot more support than it did in the years past. But when it comes to football, I mean, that's the end all be all. If we win a football national championship, then Blacksburg is put on the map. The Hokies are legitimate, and we will become a legitimate powerhouse in the ACC like we once were back in the thousands and the 90s. So under Brent Pry, I'm hoping this happens, and only time will tell.
Well, I mean, obviously we all are as well. I mean, this turned into a pseudo football topic, but started out at the top, really praising what programs like softball, wrestling have been able to do. So obviously you're excited for the start of the football season, but I mean, hey, softball season is a week away. They are starting out a week from today on next Friday. They're playing a couple of Big Ten teams down in Florida for their kickoff, and then baseball starts in 2 weeks. They're playing right here in Blacksburg on February 18th. They start off against UNC Asheville. So those seasons are, spring sports. They're about to become underway. Ethan, man, great topic. That got a lot of leverage out of that, and we got a lot of audience interaction, which is great. Do we have anything else from YouTube Live? Do we have anything else from the text?
Just a couple people said that they think wrestling has the best chance.
And it's a good option. It's a top 2 option in my opinion. No, like you said, and you from what you've been telling me, you're clearly a stronger follower of wrestling here than I am. But no, they have built a really good program, and they have good depth. And like you said, with the Southeast Regional Training Center, and with the recruits that they're bringing in, and just their development, they are building something to where they can contend year over year over year. So really good stuff there from you. So we got about 2-ish minutes to close out the show today. What direction do you guys want to go in as our just kind of last hurrah for the end of the week? I've got a couple things here on the sheet that we could tackle. Maybe just like a quick question. Yeah, Ryan, you want to say something?
Yeah, let's address a message that Ethan got at the very beginning of the show. It might have been a bit of a troll job, but we'll address it. Who is better, LaMelo Ball or Lonzo Ball?
Now, look, this is where I think I'm gonna go with it. I think I'm gonna say right now, LaMelo. I think he is the higher ceiling player, but it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that offensively he's just really, really good. Now, Lonzo's not bad too, but they're just two different guys. LaMelo is a better all-around scorer. I think Lonzo is a better overall player, and I think he's finally found a good role for himself. Expectations in Los Angeles, and then going out to New Orleans. Now he's in Chicago, and he's playing well, even if his role is a little reduced. He's a really good playmaker, and he's a above-average defender at guard. It's just that offensively, and even still offensively, his shooting numbers have gone up. He just doesn't have the variety of tools that LaMelo has. But in this league, I think I'm going to go LaMelo. I think his scoring play puts him a solid notch above his brother, even though Lonzo's a really good player.
I agree with LaMelo. Bulls fan, but Lonzo just doesn't have all the tools that LaMelo has. Lonzo, he's a really good defender now. The Bulls are really missing him and Alex Caruso at the moment. They can't defend at all without them too. He's a great playmaker. He's really good at pushing the ball. He looks like a quarterback out there, and he hits the shots when he's open. But LaMelo is creating his own, and there's two different players. They're hard to compare, but I think LaMelo will end up having the better overall career, but Lonzo should have a long career and always be a solid point guard.
And I mean, let's not act like LaMelo's not this, elite tier playmaker as well. I mean, you just see highlight tapes every night, lobs from him to Miles Bridges. I mean, once Miles leaves, LaMelo's going to have to find a new lob partner. I mean, those two are electric together. And, if Charlotte's able to keep hold of him, Bridges, that is, they could be exciting for years to come. So guys, if you're listening to us, YouTube Live, text us. We'll answer any of your questions. I mean, I think the first text we ever got was from a Jets fan asking if Mike White was a better quarterback than Zach Wilson or was the future of the franchise. We'll answer whatever you want, even if it's completely off topic, even if it's completely absurd. All right, we're out of time for the day. Thank you to Ethan and Nels for joining Ryan and myself. This is 3304 Daily. Enjoy your weekends, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.